And I'll introduce you guys. You guys all know Darryl. Darryl is the director of OC, and you guys all have been working with him. And he is the one with the vision behind all of this that helps guide Ogallala Commons in the direction that is going to help our youth and help us see forward in vision. So, all right, Darryl, you are up.
Okay. Thank you all for being on tonight. Let me start out by asking everybody to chat something in the chat box, because I think all of you, this would be the first time you might have heard about Commonwealth in a discussion or presentation besides Tanley. So I want to talk about sense of place for a minute. Does everybody have some idea of what that is? If I say to you, sense of place. All right, Jennifer, how about for you? You're the youngest of the group, so what do you think a sense of place means? If you had to guess. Jennifer, you're muted. You have to unmute. There you go.
Like knowing where your ground is and like where you stand, like as an individual, and like just you, like, you know.
Okay, you said an important word there. The ground you stand on. So what makes you feel grounded? I think that's a good definition of sense of place. What grounds you?
What grounds me? What grounds me is just like knowing my environment and kind of like getting a sense of knowing what I'm getting into. Okay,
that's good. What I want to ask all of you to put something in the chat box, something that is an example of your sense of place. Or if someone asks you, what is your sense of place? What is something that points to it or illustrates it? Can you write down something? What comes to your mind? Okay. Feeling part of your community. Your community is part of your sense of place. All right. What else is part of your sense of place? People who you share values with, your community. Another way of saying community. Anything else that makes a sense of place for you? There's one real important thing. It's where you spend a lot of time, like every night. What is that? Anybody want to chat that in? Write that in. What? Yes, your home, Traley. Yeah, your home is a big part of your sense of place. What else? So who's in the home with you? That would be part of your sense of place. Anybody want to chat that in? Emily, can you chat that in? Who's in the house? Yes, your family. Thank you, Alicia. So family's part of your sense of place. What else is connected to your family that would be part of your sense of place? Is it just your immediate family that's part of your sense of place? Or are there others? Anybody can type that in. Yes, your friends. So we're looking around. Okay, people you work with. Yeah, so that kind of points to community. Is your sense of place, does it involve people who lived before you and your present family? Would that be part of, teachers and classmates? That's very good. You spend a lot of time in the school, so school is definitely part of your sense of place. But I want you to think a little bit more. Are there people who lived before the people you know now that you see? Are they part of your sense of place? Who would they be? I have pictures of them up. Many of them are not alive right now. Who am I talking about? Sense of place. Yeah, your ancestors, grandparents, great-grandparents, okay? Maybe it was the people who lived in this landscape where you call home. Maybe they're part of your sense of place, all right? Grandparents or farmers, okay? Emily, that's good. So now your sense of place is getting a little bit bigger. It's like concentric circles, right? First, it's your friend, your family, your friends, your home, community. That's another concentric circle. Those who lived here before you, those who passed on traits to you or passed on memories. So let's extrapolate out from that. What's another word for that? What went before? You studied in school. It's called, people say, if you don't know this, you're bound to repeat it. What is that word? There we go. Thank you, Traley and Emily. History. So the history that you are living with those around you or with the land, that's part of your sense of place, but also the histories before you. Okay, that has an impact on you. You may not know it really well, but that's why we spend so many years in school, right? One of the things we learn about is history. So these are all very good. Am I missing anything in the chat? Abby?
No,
Okay.
it looks like you got it all. Yeah, you're doing
All right.
you're doing a good job.
This is very good. So any other little things that you would put in your sense of place that I haven't touched on? What things do you like that make you feel like that makes me who I am? This is part of what makes me who I am. What would those, what's one example of that? Your culture. Okay, that's right, Jennifer. That's being a member of Taos Pueblo. That is a big part of who you are. It's part of your sense of place. Okay, what else? Your hobbies. Very good, Traley. So if you like to sew, if you like to do art, if you like to play cards, if you like to hike, if you like to birdwatch, those are all what I would call examples of sense of place. So if those things are, what's one other thing? Very popular culture, people buy it. People go to hear it. What is that? Okay, I can't make it any more clear. People spend a lot of time
hear
talking
it.
about,
Yeah.
okay.
What do we hear? What do we hear?
All right, I will make this.
Anybody have it? There it is. Good job, Traley.
Okay, music. This is a very big thing. Okay, so then you could add a lot of other things to that too, other art forms. Okay, those are part of who we are. So is this the same for everybody all over the world? No, they have very different forms of music, dance. Okay, but that's all a part of what makes us who we are, part of our sense of place. So now I want to share this thing that I have asked all of you to look at ahead of time, and hopefully I won't have any trouble finding it. Here we go. Did that share? Can everyone see the? Okay.
Yes.
This is a real important thing for Ogallala Commons. And Tammy, I'm going to ask you to talk about this later when we get into examples. But one of the most important things that Ogallala Commons can offer each one of you during your internship and after is this illustration, this graphic, 12 key assets. So why is this important? Because you might come into your internship in your locality, in your hometown, and think, well, we got a few things here. We have a dentist office, we have a hospital, but you might say, oh, there's a lot of things we don't have, and I can't wait to get out of here so I can go find those things because they're important to me. I'd like to have them in my life, or I think they're going to lead to my career or my job. That is all fine and good and totally normal. But what Ogallala Commons is asking you to do in your internship and in the rest of your life is know about things that you already have, which we call assets. Okay? Traley, what's an example of if I said, what is an asset? What do most people think about when you ask, do you have any assets? So I'm asking you, do you have any assets?
Like the definition of an asset or what my asset would be?
Both. You can take one at a time.
Okay, I would say an asset is like something that will benefit you or the person that you're giving your asset to, I guess. So like my assets would be like I'm well-rounded because I've worked so many weird and different jobs, so I can do a few different things.
That's cool. And you're still in high school?
I'm graduating on Sunday.
Oh, okay. Well, that's great. You already have that many experiences with work.
Yeah.
Yes, that's a real asset. Some people would say it's synonymous with traits or whatever, but assets, things that benefit you or add value. So the most I guess common asset that people talk about is financial, right? So if you have a bank account, if you have a checking account, is that an asset or a deficit? I'll ask you, Tammy, what is it, an asset or a deficit to have a checking account?
I think an asset.
Yes, that's good. You're ready for your senior year. You're ready for the introduction to business. You probably already had that class. Yes, it is an asset. It's something of value, something you can use to help others too. So yeah, asset. So what often happens to us when we grow up in rural communities is we're really aware of things we don't have, what's missing, what we wish was in our town, what we might drive to the bigger city to have, like a Walmart or a mall or things like that, okay? But what happens is it's very hard for us sometimes to understand we already have assets, and to not only know them, but to be in touch with them, okay? We might know about them and say, well, yeah, somebody out there is farming, but I don't have anything to do with that, okay? There are assets that even if we're not using them or working with them, they're still benefiting us. So when I was driving around with a OC board member a long time ago, like 2003, we asked ourselves, what are 12 assets that every community has? And we came up with this list, and it still holds true today. So this is a real important tool for you. Let's start with one of those 12 things, education. This involves all of you, okay? All of you are getting an education, is that correct? Even you, Emily, you finished your undergrad, but you're going to be going for more education. Do all the communities that you all represent, that you live in, do they have examples of the asset of education? I see a nod. Yes, they do. I mean, a lot of you are in the local high school. Emily, you graduated from your high school in Hereford, and you went to the local university. Jennifer, there are assets of education in Taos Pueblo, correct? Okay. Or is it the high school is not on the Pueblo though, is it? Can you unmute? Sorry.
No,
Yeah.
no, but there's a day school on the Pueblo.
Right.
Like it's yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. But the high school is in town.
So those are the easiest things to think about, to identify when we talk about examples of education, but there's a lot of others, aren't there? What if your community is so small, you don't have a school? Does that mean you have no assets of education? Tralee, what would be another example of education that would be in a community that does not have a public school? Can you think of one?
I would say maybe like a Sunday school or a church type of thing.
That's very good. Emily, could you piggyback on that and think of some others?
Sure. Our library had or tried to have like an adult like night class for working adults,
Yes.
and try to do kind of a continuing education thing. And then they have like really strong summer reading programs and stuff like that for kids.
Perfect examples. Alicia, can you unmute and tell me if you can think of some other examples of education besides having a school? What if your community doesn't have a school or even a library? What are some other examples?
I think that we can be educated just in generic conversations with other community members, especially with people that are in different fields. Like I know I'm working closely with the Research and Extension Center up in, for the Southwest Kansas, but I know like through different just encounters with other businesses, I can learn things that I didn't know before and educate myself in that way.
That's very true. So if there's anybody in a community that has a trade or has a skill, like they know how to quilt or they know how to paint, there may not be a school, there may not be a formal class, but you could go and be educated with them. Isn't that correct? Okay, so those are some ways to look at education. So this is why we say These 12 key assets are in every community, okay? I live in a community of 300 people. I have to really think about it, but all 12 of these assets, there are examples of them here in this village, okay?
I think of 4-H too
so
as another avenue. Yeah,
Thank you
4-H being another avenue too for education, that it can just really look vastly different for little kids all the way up. It could even be daycare or Head Start in rural communities, and then all the way growing all the way through.
It's a great example, Abby. Thank you for that. So this, I think, it's at the top, not because, I don't know why I got at the top, but it's the easiest one to think of, right? I mean, almost, you'd be hard pressed not to be able to come up with some example of education in whatever community you're in, any part of the world, China, Africa, any country in Africa. There's all kinds of education going on. Okay, how about health? So Haxton has a hospital, correct? Haxton, Colorado, all right, so school and a hospital. Nazareth does not have a hospital. There's one 12 miles away and 20 miles away. What are some other examples of health? I'm going to ask Jennifer again. Jennifer, what's some examples of health in your community?
We have a health community service for the Pueblo, and that's really it. And there's like hospitals, and there's like one urgent care.
Okay. Would there be somebody in the Pueblo who, if you had, I don't know, stomach ache, would they know about plants or homeopathic remedies?
Yeah, that you would mostly get like that information from the Willow Center, because they work with that stuff, and they research and they give a lot of that stuff back to the community.
Okay.
So yeah, there is some people you could go to for that.
So long before there were hospitals, because we really haven't had them that long when you think about it. I mean, the United States got going in 1776, and there weren't hospitals really. There were medical people, there were doctors. So people have always had ways of creating health, creating healthy lifestyles. So if I if there wasn't a hospital or a pharmacy, what other things could bring about health in a community?
I love the diversity of thinking of health through not just, is there a clinic or is there a hospital, but even is there somebody, I mean, it could even go into, is there a physical coach? You know, it could be gyms. It could be, I mean, I loved Jennifer's response of what they have in her community for health, that it can reach, that all of these 12 key assets, that they all can reach, that they're not standard answers. There's not necessarily a list of right answers, but it really is unique to each community. Yeah,
so really this is a chance for all of you to have just open up to some things. So really what the 12 key asset wheel is about is it's a lens. It's like a window. It's like 12 windows for you to look through and say, okay, well, I hadn't really thought about that, but since this is on here, okay, I am going to think about it. Oh yeah, we do have examples in my community, whatever one that is, of leisure and recreation or of history, okay? So even if you don't have a museum, where else would you find examples of history in a community? Kind of goes back to that sense of place. Where are some deposits of history that you could access that are not in the school and not in a museum?
Maybe a library.
Okay, and where else? I would say there's one possibly in your home. What would that be?
Yeah, Jennifer says my elders.
Yes, Jennifer, thank you for that. So that is what we call the oral tradition. People tell stories, and that is really important. I mean, if you have an extended family that's big or not so big, if you had a chance to know your grandparents and they're still around, they could tell you stories that are a real important part of your history. Would you agree? You might not know them, but if you ever, I think that's one of the big ahas, is to think, wow, there's history, but I don't know how to get in touch with it. I don't know how to access it. One way is through people, our elders. Okay. Another one is, how many of your families have a family history written down? Has anybody seen your family history? Okay, this is one of the earliest things I saw in my life, maybe because people took the time to do it, but I have those books. I don't know that we'll ever be able to do them again because our life has changed, everything's digital. But about 40 years ago, when my grandparents were getting older, those people wrote down our history, okay, back to Germany, which wasn't that many generations. So that is written down, and that's a real important thing to me. So look for that. There might be some written history about your family, and that is an example. You might say, well, it's not the whole community. Doesn't matter. It's part of your history. Your history is not just what you study in U.S. history in high school or college. All right. So that's a real important asset because it gives us examples of how people lived, what they did, how they made a difference. What worked and also what didn't work, like the Dust Bowl. We should know that history, shouldn't we? Emily, why do we need to know that history of the Dust Bowl?
Because it was really impactful for our area, and farming has kind of been evolving over the past few decades to try to keep that from happening again, because it was terrible. Yes,
and still today though, we have dust storms. We had one last month. So it's still part of us. It hasn't ended. It's just not as bad. So these things are cyclical. Okay, so I think this is just to give you a few examples. I don't want to spend too much time on this, but those are kind of the history, education, those kind of things. But there's some in here you might not think of. Water cycle. Is that part of your assets, the water cycle? It absolutely is. There would be no Haxton, Colorado, if it was not for what? Tanley, what part of the water cycle makes life in Haxton possible? I don't know a whole lot about Haxton, but I know this much. You don't get your water from a river, do you?
No, we do not get our water from a river.
Where does your water come from?
The aquifer.
That's right, the Ogallala aquifer. So you and Emily and Traley and we are connected by the aquifer. We have the same aquifer. It's a little different, but it's called the Ogallala aquifer. And we wouldn't live where we live today. Abby wouldn't either if it wasn't for the aquifer, because in Vilas, Colorado, she gets her water. The village gets its water from the aquifer. Okay, not to mention all the crops and all the businesses that make life possible for us. Those businesses draw life from the aquifer, and the aquifer is sustained. It was formed, and it continues because of the water cycle. So it's that basic to your life. You might not think, I never think about it. I just turn on the faucet. Well, we all do that, but the truth is we cannot live without the asset of the water cycle. So we need to know what it is, right?
Yeah, and I think it's interesting how that ties to history, is that most communities, all communities actually were built where water is.
Yeah.
If they could find water, then they could build a community there. And so that really ties into our history that is still living today, of the story of why our community started. There was probably water there, and that could be some water that we're still tapping into to nourish us today.
So it's really great that, Alicia, that you're doing this in your internship, working on water conservation and sustainability, because we can do without driving our cars. We know this now since the pandemic. We can do a lot without a lot of things, but there's one thing we cannot do without. No matter how wealthy we become in material things or whatever, we have to have water. And it has to come from somewhere close by. We might say, well, we could always just import it. Well, that hasn't worked, and I don't think it really will work for, not for the kind of populations we have. So wherever you live in the world, your life depends on water, okay? So it's not just the arts, it's not just education, it's the things of the environment that I call like the water cycle. Here's another one, soil and mineral cycle. How many of you are involved in farming? Your parents or families do anything with farming? Okay, Tanley. All right, so But I'll tell you what, part of your history is all of you came from farmers. I bet you only have to go back like 2 generations if you have to go back that far. And that was the occupation of your ancestors, okay? So you're not that far from it. You might think, well, that's cool, but I don't have anything to do with it today. That's not correct. Just like the water, you can't live without the soil, okay? All that food we're eating, even if it comes from California or Chile or wherever, it's from the soil, okay? So soil is this thin layer that surrounds the planet that makes our life possible, just like water. So if you're going to have a life in the future, you might say, well, I'll just go to the store. Guess where the store gets its food from? The soil, okay? So this is a basic asset. And whether your life is directly involved in it or not, it's part of your asset list and your community's asset list and your family's asset list, all right? Okay, food shed is similar. You might say, well, what is that? Well, let me tell you, about 60 years ago, your grandparents, if they lived in Haxton or Hereford or Pratt, Alicia, did your great-grandparents live in Pratt, your grandparents?
Yep, we've been here for a while.
Okay, so I bet if you were able to go back and talk to someone or read something, you would find this basic fact out, and that is anybody who lived in the kind of communities we live in, they must have had 30,000 people. 80% of their food came from within 10 miles of the community. There was not a Walmart, there was no King Soopers, there was no going to Denver or Amarillo to pick up groceries like I do today. I don't go to Denver, but I do go to Amarillo. I picked up groceries today. You couldn't do that. People's food came from where they lived. Okay, so they were real aware. They had to buy coffee, might have had to buy some other staples and flour, but a lot of their food came from their food shed. You know, like everybody lives in a watershed, we live in a food shed. So one of the things that's really hurting our communities today, all over the world, but also in the United States, is our food sheds have declined. In other words, we're dependent on a couple of places and trucks and lots of other things to get food. We're not going to change that in your lifetime, but if we have local production and we're aware of it and we have people that we know and we get our eggs from them or we get some kind of food from them, do you think that helps us during a crisis? Absolutely. This has become so important since March. Since the 1st of March, millions of Americans are starting to ask, hey, who's producing my food? Do I know anybody who can sell me some meat? Do I know anybody who does vegetables? Because when I go to the store, they're out of some things. Okay, so that myth that everything we need is going to be in the store, it's kind of, I think it's been broken a little bit. All right, so some people, they never got that far away from it, but I'll just tell you all, I grew up like all of you. I lived on a farm, but we produced cattle and things that we sold. We didn't eat any of it, very little, although my mother was a good gardener. So I am one of 12 children, and I'm an active gardener now. I do all this other stuff, which, you know, makes me a little bit of money, but I spend a lot of time growing food, and I like it. But one of the things I like about it is, I know I can't grow all my food, but I grow some, and other people do, and we can trade, and that makes our community stronger. So I'm just pointing out all these things, just so you think about it, is just like you need education and you need good health care and good health, you also need soil, you need water, and you need food, and not just food from other countries or from California. You need local food. So you might say, well, nobody's doing that in my community. Look harder. Someone is, okay? Where's one place you can always find some food? Tanley, what's one place you could always find some food? In Haxton. I guarantee it.
For me personally, we have a little bit of a community garden that
Yes.
one family runs, and so we all come together to help with that, and then everybody gets an equal share of it.
Okay, it's a good example. Alicia, what's another example of where you could always find food no matter where you live? even if you don't have a grocery store in the town, you would have food here. Where would that be found? All right. I might have lost the, okay, Jennifer. You both are well, anyway, there we go. Yes, where can you always
I
find
can,
food in Taos Pueblo?
well, right now I'm doing my internship at the Red Willow Farmers Market.
Okay.
And right now, that's where everyone can get fresh produce and like fresh
Okay.
greens and stuff like that.
If the Pueblo didn't have Red Willow Farm, could you still find food there?
No, well, there are actually some farmers there that you probably could buy some, but most likely you would just need to go to the store.
Yes, no, that's how we all think, and there's some truth to it, but there's truth to what I'm saying too. There's somebody on Taos Pueblo, I know, because I have been there 3 years ago. There were fruit trees, they had chickens, and they were doing chicos. You know what those are? They were growing sweet corn, and they were how do you make chicos? Yeah, you basically dehydrate it, right? So
Yeah, you let them sit.
right, okay, so even though, and this had nothing to do with Red Willow Farm, so this is a challenge to all of you. Find out this summer when you're doing this internship and when you write your blog on Commonwealth, is there any examples of food? Because I guarantee you someone's growing a garden, someone's got some chickens, and it would be interesting for you to know about them, because we all think, oh, nah, we don't. Yeah. So Emily, even in Hereford, there are a lot of gardens, and there may not be some chickens in the city limits, but I bet you there are. So I just think this is a time in your life where it will be really helpful to you now and in your future to know about food. A lot of people your age are real interested in cooking, and that's great. And you know where your food comes from. So this fits right in. Every place in the world has a food shed. Okay.
Has anybody
Right.
had conversations in your home recently because of COVID that actually pondered, like, if our grocery store stops having food, we would, and then kind of talked about it? Has anybody had any of those types of conversations in their house recently? Emily, is that, yeah, I mean, I've had that conversation ourselves too. And I just thought, if we didn't have food, this is what I would do. This is who I would go to. Or I've even facilitated some conversations with some people. Like, if the grocery store stops supporting, could I come to you? Yes.
Okay, so I think that what the 12 key assets, these 12 windows, why they're important is we might think, man, the only thing really happening in my town is the hospital, the school, and the bank. Well, those are real important. Don't get me wrong, they're very important. But there are lots of other assets, okay? Wherever your water is coming from in the town of Haxton, if that thing goes down, that's bad news, isn't it? There wouldn't be any municipal water supply. Same way with Hereford. Emily, when I lived in Hereford for 8 years, in the late 80s, early 90s, the big thing was, where are we going to get water? So they drilled about 10 wells into the Santa Rosa back then, because they wanted to make sure they had this water supply that would take care of a city of 16,000. And it's never going to be over. I live in this little village, and our water supply, they thought we were doing pretty good, but now we're into the drought again. So they're starting to say, gosh, I wonder where we can get some water. It's not a given that we have all these things. So these assets, you might say, well, I'll just go move to British Columbia or someplace where they get a lot of rain. Anywhere in the world now, this is a challenge, having adequate water. Okay, so I'm going to talk about one more, and then we're going to get into a little bit of discussion here. I want to talk about, well, let me give you just a couple of things here on the side. We'll leave the wheel, but this is one thing when you do your third blog, you don't have to write about every one of the 12 key assets, but you can use these windows, this way of looking at assets to see some examples of maybe 2 or 3 of those that surprise you. Like, okay, before I started this internship, I never considered that Haxton had a lot of arts and culture. They don't have concerts for 2,000 people there or something like that. But you might discover there's lots of culture, but maybe it's in the form of, I don't know, cards, artists, Maybe people do crafts. That's just one little example. You might have not considered how much of the food shed is in your community, or how much leisure and recreation. So that's what you do in that blog. 250 words about some examples that you see. So Tanley, I'm going to pick on you because I gave you some heads up, right? What did you write about last year in your blog about the 12 key assets? Could you share that?
So last year in my blog, I wrote about 3 of them that I could find in Haxton, which were education, food shed, and sense of place. And last year it was a lot easier to write about because I'd already done it before, but I remember my very first internship, it's kind of a difficult concept to grasp and trying to recognize all these things within the community, especially when you've never really been trained to look for them. So it was a little bit of a struggle, but I think the one that stood out to me the most was education. Our school has always had a really great support system from the community and the parents, and not just for things like sports and clubs, but for our general education as a whole. And the next one was food shed. We have really deep rooted ties to the agriculture around our areas. If you walk into the local grocery store, it's full of local beef from all of our ranchers, as well as a lot of sweet corn that the farmers raise around here. I've actually been working on, for my internship, creating a shop local campaign. So encouraging people in the community to shop local, buy local from whether it's the grocery store or the local farmers and ranchers in order to keep that money in our economy, especially where we need it right now. And then finally was sense of place. I think for me, working with the Chamber of Commerce and being in charge of organizing a lot of large events, where I found sense of place was in these town-wide events. We have 2 really big ones. They're called Old Fashioned Saturday Night and Corn Festival. And I found that a lot of people's sense of place here in Haxton is coming together and volunteering their time to put on these events, as well as when the actual event happens, spending time with all their friends and family.
Thank you. Okay, so that is really good. There is the gist of a 250-word blog right there. Okay, so now that you've done this twice, and now it's going to be your 3rd time, this is like, do you think, okay, there's one of these I haven't really explored that I want to maybe dig into a little bit more?
Yeah, I don't think I've really looked into the soil and mineral cycle or even renewable energy. Those are kind of ones that I kind of put on the back burner a little bit.
Okay, so even though it's your 3rd time around, there's still examples you could write about.
Yeah, I still have a lot to learn still.
Cool. Okay. All right. So that gives you all some hope. You just start in somewhere, just like Tanley said, and see where it leads you. But 250 words is not very many. We've had interns over the past. Sometimes we try to do all 12, and that got to be like 500 words. And so better to just pick out a few. All right. So, but let's go over here and make sure we know what is Commonwealth. So Commonwealth, the reason we call it Commonwealth is we have a lot of private wealth that we say, oh, I made this money, or this is my investment. Okay, there's truth to that for sure. But really, most of what we have is a gift. We might manage it, we might take care of it, we might grow it, but it's not something we totally created. And that's really the definition of Commonwealth. There are a lot of things we own together, in other words, okay? You might say, my checking account is my money. Yes, that is true. But all of our wealth really is sourced from what I would call Commonwealth. So it's a gift of the natural world. Right now, if you, hey, has everybody liked OC Facebook? You guys look at OC Facebook? Okay, there's a blog up from an intern from last year. Her name's Amanda. Amanda, darn it, I can't think of her name right now. She wrote about ecological services. Emily, have you seen that blog?
Yes, I think so. I think I read over it.
Okay, so that's the kind of blog that you could write by the end of your internship, but that was based on directly out of her research, but I thought it was really cool because she's talking about there are things that the natural world does for us that we don't ever think about, or that we don't even put a monetary value on, like clean air or like healthy water, not to mention everything else. So that is one example of all of us live from Commonwealth, and a lot of what is Commonwealth is a gift of the natural world or of our communities, our society. Okay, if we didn't have them, if we were all alone in this world, we would not have much wealth. So wealth comes from being part of a natural world and a human community. A lot of wealth on the second second bullet point is things that we inherit or that we create together. The corn festival, is that what it is, Tammy? Corn? Did I say that right? Corn festival? Okay, that cannot be created by you alone or by the chamber alone. That must be created by the whole community, correct?
Yes.
Okay, so that's the kind of wealth that's Commonwealth too. The arts, our sense of place. We have personal feelings about it, but it's all something we create together. And also it's something we want to pass on. A lot of wealth is something we want to share, not just with the people around now, but later generations, okay? We want the soil to continue to be productive. We want the air to be clean, okay? That's part of wealth. Commonwealth is a sector of the economy. I mean, there would be no farmers without soil and mineral cycle. Okay, so there's an important economic development, economic element to it. So every chamber of commerce in Haxton, Colorado, or anywhere else should be concerned about Commonwealth. Okay, and then finally, these assets, they increase or they decrease depending on how we use them. So they're not infinite. As much as we try to tell ourselves, we'll never run out of water, it just simply is not true. Even in Nebraska, where they have so much of the Ogallala, if they didn't take care of it, didn't preserve it, it would be gone. Some city would want it, first of all. So this is what Commonwealth is, and you might not think, oh, I'm not sure this has anything to do with my internship. I'm telling you, it does. Okay. And one other thing I have to let you in on, so I don't, before I run out of time, your future, your career path has a lot to do with those 12 key assets. Okay. You might think, well, I'm really interested in health. So Traley, you're interested in dentistry, right? Traley, are you interested in dentistry? Yes, right?
Yes.
Okay, well, that's great. But as you get older, you may find out someday, that was good, but I don't want to be a dentist anymore. There's a high probability, unless you spend lots of years in medical school, that any of you are not going to do one thing in your life. Okay, I'm on my third career. All right, I was in the ordained ministry once. I did this, I did that. Now I'm doing Ogallala Commons. I think it'll take me through to the end because there's just so much to do and so much fun. But you're not going to do one thing in your life. So knowing what the assets are, not just your economic assets, but these 12 assets is really important because it might be something you have to transition to someday. There are a lot of people in 2008 who lost jobs. There are a lot of people right now, millions of people have lost employment and they have to find a new direction. And it may not necessarily be in the field that they were trained in. So knowing your assets is really important. What is available in my community that I could build a livelihood around? What's available in my region that I could build a livelihood around? Okay, you see the connection? It's about your future as well. All right, now I'm going to go down to one more slide and then, yes, this one. So what is the most, all of the 12 key assets are important because I would say to you, it is a spiritual vision. So what does that mean? All these 12 key assets are related. They're interrelated and they're interdependent. You might say, man, I really like the food shed one. Guess what? You can't have the food shed without soil and mineral cycle. You can't have the food shed without health. You can't have the food shed without education. And that's just the ones I'm thinking of. They all are related, interconnected. So that's why I say, what's really important about the 12 key assets, why it's so compelling is it's a spiritual vision. That doesn't mean only people who go to church have it. It's a spiritual vision. It means it's connected to the community, to our values. Okay, so it's connected to spirituality. So spirituality, people say, what is the most important of these 12 key assets? I'm going to tell you it's spirituality, not just because I used to be in the ordained ministry, but because spirituality is not a religion. A religion is a form. Okay, it's a way to come into a spiritual life, but and it's a way to express your spirituality. But spirituality is, where did I have it here? Did I have this already? Yes. Spirituality is the web of relationships, connections, and practices that knit together persons, like you and I, we're persons, okay? So we are persons who are the result of a web of relationships and connections and practices. But so is our community, so is our environment, and so is the universe. Okay, that's heavy stuff, isn't it? Makes your head spin and your heart happy. Okay, so living as a spiritual being, that's how you tap into Commonwealth. You can't really have Commonwealth if you don't have a spiritual connection. All right, it's not just economic, it's not even just environmental, it's spiritual. Okay, so if you ask me what's the key to the 12 key assets, I would tell you spirituality. It's a spiritual vision. All right, that's for like Commonwealth 200. We're doing Commonwealth 100 tonight. So, but I just had to give you the big picture so you could let that sink in and think about it down the road. I'm going to unshare right now. I'm going to stop sharing, and all you are going to reappear. All right, Alicia, can you unmute?
Can you hear me now?
Yes. Okay.
Perfect.
Yeah, so this is your, I would think this is some of your first deep introduction to the 12 key assets. So what kind of feedback would you have about it? How does it seem to you?
It is the first time that I've really dove into it. And of course I looked over it a little bit before this call, but just hearing your explanation, I really like your point about how they're all connected and how they all lead to like a bigger being in a sense, you know. And so it was really interesting to hear kind of individually how they all can take on different roles. Like health doesn't mean a hospital and education doesn't mean just a school, but seeing how they're all much bigger than their one asset and how they connect to something even bigger than that.
Great. So this is the thing. You might say, well, you know, I really only care about 3 of those 12. That's totally normal and natural too. Yeah, there's some that make more sense to us or that we feel closer to. But if any of those 12 are declining, they're being depleted or they're deteriorating, will that have an impact on the other ones? Yes. Yes. So you might say, whoa, that's a whole lot to take care of, 12 assets. We don't have to do it by ourselves. But this is a really good way to look at the community, because the community might seem, you might think, well, it's really super duper community. And I'm sure it is. But if some of those 12 assets are declining or they're in bad shape, they're going to need to be rebuilt. They're going to need to be reinvigorated if a community is going to be truly vibrant and healthy and have well-being. So that's one of the points I'd like to leave you with. You can't do this in 1 year. It's a lifetime. It's a lifetime of work. They didn't get into bad shape, any of the 12 key assets, or they didn't disappear in a year. It happens over time. Okay, so we've been depleting the aquifer for decades, since early 1900s, but especially since 1950. So to preserve the water, we're not going to get that done in 1 year. It's going to take some time. It's going to take generations, or at least a generation. Okay, so this is big stuff. It should keep you busy the rest of your life, and that doesn't mean you can't you would just throw up your hands and say, oh, there's nothing we can do about it. It's too big. You can do little things, and you can work with other people, because this is community work. It's, remember, spiritual vision. You have to make a lot of connections to raise up and preserve and reinvigorate a community. So I hope one thing that you get from this tonight is a community is multifaceted. It is about the businesses, for sure. People have to have livelihoods, but it's also about the land we live on. It's about the ecology, the economy, and the society, to put it simply. All right, Abby, what would you like to add in here? We're coming to the close.
Yeah, so we just have a few minutes. So now that we've gone through all of them, could you guys unmute and share like one of them that kind of touched you the most, that you're like, oh, this is the biggest one? You know, I can say for me, it's education. That's where my career is. That's kind of oddly enough been my passion most of my life, whether it was educating myself or educating my kids at home when they weren't in school. But knowledge is important to me, to continue to be gaining knowledge all the time. So that's mine. That's the biggest out of all 12. What about you guys? In your life now, it doesn't mean like, you know, where you may think your life's going to be, or it doesn't have to be some big philosophical answer, but just looking at them now, which one do you resonate the most with? And you guys can just unmute and share, or I can call you guys out individually. It's up to you.
I think mine was water, because like that's like a main thing in my religion is like water. It runs through our pueblo, you know, it grows our food, and I feel like that is a big starting point in our cycle, and you know, in life basically.
Thank you, Jennifer, for sharing. And I, you know, I'm just glad that you're on here. I'm glad you're on here. I like your diversity.
Thank you.
Somebody else want to share?
I think I'd have to agree with you for education. Where I want to be a dentist, I know there's a lot of school ahead of me, but I also like the idea of just being able to go to your like neighbors and being able to learn a little something from them and from your parents and grandparents and even your siblings and classmates. I just really like the idea of being able to learn everywhere. It doesn't have to be in a school setting.
Good.
Yeah, thanks for sharing, Traley. I agree. Somebody else?
I guess for me, mine would still be kind of wildlife in the natural environment. For me, it's like we need to manage our natural environment because that's kind of like what supports agriculture, and we need to manage for our water cycle and stuff like that, and educate everyone about how to manage everything so that, yeah.
I think there's a lot of truth to that, that is a foundation for so many of the other Commonwealth assets. I think that's probably really true. Yeah. Alicia or Tanley, do you guys want to share, please?
I think mine would have to be sense of place. A big thing to me is being a part of a community and just giving me that sense of mind and being able to be grounded within that.
Thank you. And by the way, when you talked about your blog from the past 2 years, you did a great job presenting that and summarizing that. I was actually really impressed by your presentation. You have a very good speaking voice. You did a good job.
Thank you.
Alicia, are you on here? You might not be
hear me?
able to. We can. Do you want to
Okay.
share?
Yes, I'd love to. I think the biggest one for my internship will obviously be the water cycle, because I'm excited to see like how that issue, how the issue of water is lacking in Garden City and how that can play into things. But I also think that one I'll like to focus on is the soil and mineral cycle, because I just recently finished a soils class at K-State and really enjoyed it. And I know now how important soils is, even for the water cycle, you know, just the fact that water flows through the soil, and, you know, soil plays a really big part in the water cycle. And so I think that learning about those two during my internship this summer will be exciting.
Good. That's great. I love how you took something that you took a class in and you're like, ooh, that sparked a little bit of passion. And now you're able to dig a little bit deeper in that. I think that's great. Well, we are right at the top of the hour, so we will go ahead and wrap up. Unless, Darryl, do you have anything else that you want to add?
I really appreciate your participation and everyone's comments tonight. So I would just say, as you look at that blog that you're going to write, definitely focus on assets that you really feel comfortable with, but also pick one that you hadn't really thought about, and try to expand a little bit. How does this one present in my community? What are examples of it that I hadn't really thought about? That would make a really interesting blog to read. And remember, you have to have 2 photos, but you don't just have to have 2. You might want to put 3 or 4 on this blog, because there's just so much in your community. So, and the last thing I would say is, all of us come from places that are rich. They might be economically struggling, but when you look at through the 12 key assets as a lens, you realize we are rich. And people in any part of the world are rich. We just
I gotta
don't.
tell you,
Yeah.
sorry guys. I was gonna say, I gotta tell you guys a story. We were at the school today. I work at a school in Vilas, and you guys, we are just so small. And there's not much industry, and I say much, I mean really, I think maybe we have 2 businesses within our area. And we were at the school today, and somebody found some old blueprints, and I'm guessing these blueprints were probably from like the 40s. And the vision that they had for Vilas, they had already mapped out how much it was going to grow, and they had another town next to us already, and they had mapped that out. And I thought, oh my gosh, what history was here before? And it's so hard to see that vision from 70 years ago, but somebody had great vision, and I'm sure there was a bunch of reasons that they had created that, those blueprints at that one time. But man, it really resonated with tonight's conversation of the history that even is in a place that is poverty stricken, that is ran down, that looks like it's not much anymore. There is so much history.
That's a really good example, Abby. And like when you drive around the country and you see fallen down barns or what used to be farmsteads, it's really important to say that's not all it was. That you can see this ruins tells you somebody had a vision once and they built something. If any of you live in a house, and if you ever, some point in your life, that house falls into disrepair, you'll have this feeling. It's like, people don't understand what happened there.
Yeah.
Somebody had vision, they had energy, and they did things. So this is how to look at your community too. You might see there's a lot of empty stores here. There's a lot of rundown stuff. Turn it around and say, what does that tell me that somebody had a dream here? And for that too, not just how things are right now.
Yeah. So yeah, I totally encourage you guys to dig a little deeper into a Commonwealth asset that you can't see so easily, or maybe you're so passionate about, and you might uncover something that will stick with you as you continue to grow. So, and
inspire you.
Yes, inspire. That's even a better word. I wanted to remind you guys that next week will be June 24th, and that's going to be an entrepreneurship. And John Whitler will be presenting that time. And it's not only if you own your own business entrepreneurship. So don't feel if you don't own your own business, you don't qualify for that call. Please join. Please join anyway. Of course, if you guys ever have any questions, any concerns, you are not alone in your internship. Please reach out. Everybody's an email, text, or phone call away, and we're happy to help you. And is there anything else, Darryl, that you want to add before we say goodbye?
No, great job, everybody. And I hope your internships are going well. Even though if they're going slowly, hang in there.
Yes, yes.
And I'm looking for your blogs. I love to read blogs, so I keep looking. So good writing to everybody.
Well, thanks, guys, for joining, and we'll see you guys maybe next week. Bye.
Bye. Bye, everyone.